Hey everybody, Zack Perry here, Legislative Education Chair for Texas Healthcare Advisory Council, coming to you with another one of our video updates. So this one is topical. It's been in the news. We wanted to talk a little bit about last week, President Biden granted a pardon to all people convicted of simple marijuana possession under federal law. He also encouraged governors to take the same action for similar state offenses for possession of marijuana. And then he called on the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to review how marijuana is scheduled under federal law. So today, marijuana is classified as a Schedule I narcotic, meaning that it is deemed to have no medical use and high potential for abuse. What's interesting is that President Biden, amongst the Democratic nominees for president, was in fact the only candidate who did not support federal descheduling, which would effectively make marijuana legal at the federal level. So that's interesting, right? So what you can glean from that, one of two things, I guess. One, public sentiment on this issue has rapidly evolved. There are some statistics I'll share with you around the percentage of Americans that currently favor legalization of marijuana. Or the more cynical view is that this is something that President Biden thought would be a boost for the midterm elections that are coming up, and particularly around Democratic candidates. So let's talk a little bit about some statistics here. Currently, 37 states plus the District of Columbia have legalized medical marijuana, and 19 states have legal adult use marijuana, meaning you do not need a medical license to purchase and possess cannabis. There's also 5 states right now that will be voting on recreational cannabis legalization in the 2022 midterms. Those are Missouri, Arkansas, North and South Dakota, and Maryland. Back to what I said about polling. So roughly 2/3 of Americans support the legalization of marijuana. But despite that popularity, almost no candidates for Congress are talking about it. And I think there was an interesting analysis done by the Brookings Institution. And what they did was they looked at all 2,300, or I don't know if it's all, but 2,360 candidates for Congress that are running right now as in the primaries. And what they did was they sliced it and diced it every way you could imagine. But what they did is they basically, very simple top line analysis: how many folks are for this, how many folks oppose it, who is unclear, and how many just don't mention the issue at all. And I think that that's what's really interesting. So 66, I think the number is actually 68% of Americans support legalization. Over 80% of candidates for Congress didn't even mention the issue, right? And I think when you slice it down and you look at Democrats versus Republicans, you do see that there is more pro support of for the Democrats, and there's some more opposition to legalization amongst Republicans. But even in that case, the vast majority, 80–90% plus of candidates, simply don't mention the issue. I think I read something else that, this issue, it doesn't even make the top 20 list of issues for many of these primary candidates. So I think it's a really interesting space to follow. Clearly, there's a lot of movement happening in the space. I think the descheduling is a really interesting move. I think descheduling it at the federal level will do another important thing, which is it's not just about the people that are, convicted of offenses. Of course, that needs to be resolved, but it's actually creating an industry, right? Right now, because marijuana is not legal at the federal level, even companies operating within a state where it is fully legal don't have access to the federal banking system, federal banking rails. So many of them are running their business on cash, and that is a really hard way to scale an industry. And it leads to what is just a lot of inefficiency across the entire supply chain. So if it does get descheduled, I think that would be a big boon for the economics and the industry of cannabis. So I think this is a really interesting topic. I'm sure many people have opinions on it. And it would tell you that over the past 20 years, more Americans today than ever favor legalization, and they see some merit in the medicinal use for it. I'm sure we all have friends that have experience with it if we don't have experience directly ourselves. So this is an interesting one. I think we're gonna have there's more to talk about here. In fact, in 2023, I'd love for us to put together a panel of people that have spent time and consider this an area of expertise for them. So please reach out if this is something that you feel passionate about and that you spend a lot of time on and have particular expertise. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me or anybody else on the board at THAC, and we'd love to help either answer your questions or connect you to the right people. So thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll see you here again next month.